Hi, I'm Peter Jones, Chartered Surveyor, author and property investor, and I've had a great question in from Jake, so let me read it to you. It says, "Hi Peter, I'm at the beginning of my property journey, i.e. I only have my residential property in London, and I'm looking to replicate your BRR model as my first 2 or 3 projects. I wanted to ask, what are the criteria you use to assess if a deal is viable when it comes to both rental demand, yield, and return on investment? Where do you assess tenant demand? What yield do you require? What return on cash left in do you require, etc.? I'm sure you get these questions all the time, so if there's a resource to point me towards, then I'm happy for you to do that. So yeah, well, let me point you to the resource first and get that out of the way. If you go to my website, www.thepropertyteacher.co.uk, there's all sorts of resources there, including free reports, plus also my ebooks, which you have to pay for, but hopefully you'll find them really good value, because they'll show you exactly what I did to get started in property, how I went from no properties to owning 2 million quid's worth of properties in 4 years, and that was starting with none of my own money, which is true, by the way. Some people say, oh yeah, no money, load of hype. No, it's actually true. So if you go there and check that out, and that would probably be the resource which I'd recommend for you. But let me give you some ideas anyway. As I've got my selfie stick out, let's just go for it. So let's have a think. So what Jake is asking is, what are the criteria I use to assess if a deal's viable and whether it will work for BRR, both in terms of rental and yield and return on investment, and how do I assess tenant demand? What yield do I require? It's a great question. There's so much there, I could literally sort of run a one-day workshop talking about this, but let me give you some very brief thoughts on it. Well, first of all, the whole point about the BRR, which is buy, refurbish and refinance, is that it's a technique to buy property, and it doesn't have to be buy-to-lets, by the way. It works on HMOs, it works on commercial, but it's a technique of buying property which allows you to get all of your money back out by adding value to the property and then refinancing it. Now, when you add value to the property, you can add a disproportionate amount of value. So, for example, you might spend £10,000 on the refurb, but add £30,000 worth of value. Why does that happen? It's just the way that the market prices properties and the way that the market values improvements to properties. So we can do that. We can spend a lot less than we add. If you add a lot of value, and by the way, this can be made even more effective if you buy the property cheap enough to start with. So if you can buy the property at a bargain price and then add value, it creates a margin, so then after 6 months you can refinance the property, and depending upon what the figures are and how they stack up, you can get most of your money back out, or you can get all of your money back out. When you get all of your money back out, you can then go and do the whole process again, which means that with one single pot of money, you can build a portfolio. I hope that all makes sense. It does work. It's how many people have built their portfolios, myself included. But what am I looking for when I'm buying a property? Well, first of all, tenant demand is crucial. So how do I find out if there's tenant demand? Well, quite simply, I will go around my investment area and I will talk to letting agents. I talk to all of the letting agents in a particular area. I don't just talk to 1 or 2. I want to talk to them all, because every single one of them will have a different view on the market. They'll all also have their own particular biases. Some will want to do students, some will want to do professionals. Very few will want to do people on benefits, although actually the bulk of my portfolio is people on benefits. And there's nothing wrong with people on benefits, by the way. I think very stereotypically people assume if they're on benefits it's going to be hard work. There's a lot of professional tenants out there and working tenants who are more hard work. People are people. So go and talk to the letting agents and find out what the demand is for property in your area. Make no assumptions. Talk to them. Say, what are tenants looking for? What sort of properties are letting quickly? How much rent are they paying you? If I was to buy a property tomorrow, what would you suggest I buy if I want to rent it out in the next 2 weeks? Where would I buy it? Ask them where to buy it. That'd be a pretty good question to ask. Then you can get an idea of what the rental demand is. But don't buy anything till you know there is a rental demand. I don't care how BMV the property is. You can buy it 25%, 30%, 50% below market value, whatever that means, by the way. But I don't care how cheap it is, if you can't rent it out when you've bought it, then you're stuffed. So don't do that. Make sure that you're going to get the tenants in, because the tenants ultimately are going to be paying your mortgage, because you're going to finance it. Why are you going to finance it? Because the figures work so much better, the return is so much better when you finance it, and then you can do the BRR model. So the first thing is go and talk to the letting agents to make sure that there's tenant demand. When the letting agents have told you there is tenant demand and they've told you what you should be buying, then you can go to the estate agents. So what I'm looking for? Well, I'd be looking for properties which I can refurb and where I can add value. Now, refurbing is only one way of adding value. There are other ways of adding value that you can use as well. but refurb is by far the most simple, and so that's the vanilla buy-to-let model, and it works really, really well. So I'd start there. So you're going to look for properties which are a bit run down, but they're not totally falling to pieces. We're typically looking for properties which need a new kitchen, new bathrooms, decorations, new carpets. You may find there's other odds and sods to do. I quite like doing windows because they add a lot of perceived value without costing an awful lot of money. Adding central heating if it hasn't got it, or changing night storage heaters if it's got night storage heaters. But again, that's all going to depend on your area. Talk to your local letting agent about what tenants in your area actually want, and then you can do a bit of a refurb, then you can get the money back out. So what are the criteria I use? I think that's a great question, Jake. Probably not what you'd be expecting, though. What I tend to do is I will run the figures. I will make sure that I can get my money or most of my money back out. And the other thing I'll check is, once I've refinanced, will I still be getting a positive cash flow? So if I can get a positive cash flow and I can get most of my money back out, then for me, that's probably a viable project, and that's what I'll be looking at. In round terms, what sort of yield will that be? Well, it all depends, because it all depends on how much value you're going to add. It all depends on the type of finance you get and what rate of finance you're going to get. So it's only a very rough rule of thumb. If this isn't, a hard and fast rule which you must stick to, but it's probably going to be around about the 8% mark. But it might be slightly less, it might be slightly more. Run the figures, see if you can get your money back out, see if it's still cash flowing. And that's pretty much how I do it, Jake. As I say, I could probably talk about this for a whole day, but I think that's enough for now. So keep your questions coming in, and do go to my website, go to thepropertyteacher.co.uk. You'll find some great resources. Until next time, here's to successful property investing.